Welcome. This is Mrs. Schlarman, and we are here to talk about how to build a slab-built clay vessel. Right here, we have made our pattern out of paper. Notice that we use symmetry. Symmetry is awesome because you do one side and open it, and it is symmetrical. So we are inspired by the Greek and Roman vessels. And here we have a story and some geometric pattern. So what I'm going to first do is take my clay. I'm going to use the palm of my hand, and I'm going to knock that clay down. I'm going to flip it so it does not get stuck to the tablecloth. And go back and forth. At this point, I'm going to use these two wooden sticks on either side to keep my clay level at the same thickness as I roll it out. You might need to use some elbow grease here to keep that clay really moving. Okay, once again, don't forget to flip it every so often so that your clay does not stick to the table. Okay, at this point, you can pull the wood aside and take your pattern and kind of see, does it fit? I'm going to need two, so if I'm going to do front and back, I probably need to roll this out just a little bit more. Now, don't use too much elbow grease on this because obviously we want it to be able to stay thick. The thinner your clay, the less support it has, but the more delicate and intriguing your project is. So if you can keep your clay thin, your ceramic piece, your clay vessel is going to be lighter and smoother and awesome. Okay, let's see here. Where? Push right here. I'm going to take this and make it up a little longer. Be patient, take your time. Okay. Check it. Now, to get your pattern to stick, use a sponge and basically just get it a little damp. That will allow it to work like a sticker. Now I'm going to take my edge, lay it onto the clay. I'm going to use my knife, and I'm basically going to cut out my shape. All of your other pieces of clay, please gather them. We want to recycle them. We don't want them to dry out. We're going to use those for the edges and the sides of our vessel. Now, when you're cutting, you want to cut like you're pulling it through. Don't cut like a steak where you saw it. You just want to keep it vertical, straight up and down, and going around the shape of your vessel. Take those edges, ball them up. We don't want them to dry out. We want to reuse this clay. Then I'm going to take my pattern, and if my pattern comes off, fantastic. I'm going to put that onto here to cut out my second, my front and my back. If your pattern rips, do not stress. All you have to do is put this on the clay, and yeah, it works well. The only problem with that is you got to make sure that your clay does not stick to itself when going to separate. This pattern came off nicely, so I'm just going to use that. Come around here. Now, I used a Sharpie with my design. If I use just a regular marker, what happens when regular marker gets wet? It's going to bleed and kind of look like watercolor. No big deal. If you happen to get marker on your clay, no big deal. It will burn off in the firing process. When working with clay, a couple things to remember is number one, never bang on the table. That gets dust up. Don't bang the sticks. Don't clap your hands. Otherwise, dust gets in the air, hard to breathe, not fun. Okay, so I'm going to take my pattern, pull it off. I'm going to put that to the side so I can still see my design later. I'm going to take my two shapes and I'm going to set them over to the side so I can start to create the edges of my slab built vessel. So I need long, skinny rectangles. You're going to wedge out your extra clay so their air bubbles are not in the clay. Go ahead, use the palm of your hand to bang it down a little bit. Flip it so it doesn't get stuck to the thing. Bring in your safety supports over here for thickness, and bring in your roller. You're gonna roll it out. The reason you don't want air pockets in your clay is because when clay dries, the water evaporates out of it and clay will shrink. Air cannot shrink. Therefore, the air says, no, you can't shrink me, and will bust the clay. Therefore, you want to make sure you never trap air into your clay. Next step, I am going to take this and I'm going to roll it out a little bit skinnier. You really don't want it super thick. Like I said, the thinner, the better it will work. Now, day 1, you're going to create the structure. Day 2, you're going to let it become leather hard, where the clay's kind of kept the form and it's hardened up just a little bit, but it's still maneuverable. And that's going to allow you to get the smoothing and the detail and the design to be a little bit more interesting. Okay, so for example, you can see this one is already been kind of worked through, but it's not finished. It needs to have another day, back design, handles put on, and they're from there. Okay, I'm going to take my wood now and I'm going to use this as a pattern, and I'm going to basically cut the shape of the wood, which happens to be long rectangles. I'm going to line it up over here so it's the same thickness of the wood. And I might need that little piece there for the bottom. I'm going to line it up and cut. Extra clay, ball up so it doesn't dry out. Might need to use that for handles. I'm going to take these pieces. I'm going to cut off here so I'm working with just the rectangle and not odd shapes. And this one here. Okay. This point, ball it up, put it back in the clay bag. I am going to then bring back my 2 patterns, and I'm going to basically make a sandwich to create the vessel. In order to attach them, what I need to do is create scoring. Scoring are like these little X's on the edges that you're going to stick together. This allows for the slip, which is watered down clay, to fit into the cracks and dry slower. So slip is basically clay that is very watery. I literally put water in a blender, and then I put in little pieces of clay, and then it blends it up like a milkshake. You're going to do the scoring and slipping to both sides. Make sure you put the slip in there as well. Now I'm going to start edging it out. Now, in order to make this curve, what I'm going to do is score it. Score it is when you cut something, but you don't cut all the way through. If you cut all the way through, no big deal. Just move the clay and manipulate it to how you need it. I'm going to make that edge. I've got another curve right here, so I'm going to score it. Okay, that's going to allow my clay to bend easier, and I'm going to pull it around, put it on there. One more score. Pull it out. Oh, wow, that came out to almost just the size of clay I needed. Wonderful. I love it when a plan comes together. Then I take it, I want to trim it up a little bit, and put that extra clay into my pile. Adjust my edges, make sure they're smooth, and voila, first side done. Then I'm going to take this clay, and the first thing I need to do is score, putting my edges in, my little X's, and then of course don't forget to slip. And then I'm going to take it through here. I'm going to score with my knife, bend, score with my knife, bend it, maneuver. One more scoring. And there. If you have a very delicate vase or something that gets really skinny, you might have to trim your edges of your wall so that it will fit as well. Come in, cut this side off, recycle. Oh, well, I'm gonna use that for my bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna measure out to see what I need to have here, and then I'm gonna take that shape and see. Oh, perfect. Put the clay over there. Before I start sticking, don't forget to go back and score and slip everything, where you're putting it, where you're attaching it. Very important. Right now the clay is super wet and it sticks to itself, but as it dries, it's going to shrink and pull away. So right now you have two pieces, you go like this, it sticks, but as they dry, these two sections are gonna pull apart. Okay, I'm gonna come in through here, I'm gonna attach it, smooth it, might need to shimmy it a little bit. This one looks a little higher than there, like my rectangles were a little off. Okay, next, I'm going to attach the top. So I'm gonna go around here and score it again. Sometimes sound effects help, makes it more interesting. Okay, go ahead here. I'm going to basically score this area. I'm putting the top on my vessel, or the side, the two sides actually. And it's kind of like just making a sandwich. This works great if working for cardboard. Cardboard, creating slabs, scoring them, and attaching them. It's great sculpture material. Oh, I almost got ahead of myself. Should have put some slip on this side as well, not just one side. Do them both. Then attach the top, and you're probably going to have to maneuver it to where those edges are fitting. Might need to come out, attach them, kind of get it to where it'll go. Now I'm going to smooth it out. My top piece looks a little bigger than my bottom piece. So I might take my knife and basically just kind of shimmy off any excess clay and gather that for later. So just shimmy it off, cut it around so it fits better. Okay. You can use various different tools. I'm going to take this tool and I'm basically going to blend these two edges together. So everywhere I have a score, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to smooth it as best as I can. So this is smoothing the area. Okay. Now I'm going to let this sit for a day so it becomes leather hard. After it becomes leather hard, it's going to be a lot easier to work with and easier to get rid of these like little sections of clay that look like they might need some smoothing and making it look nice and neat. So when you get to this part and they're all sealed and your edges are sealed and the structure is strong, okay, I need to look at this right here. This top part needs to be trimmed up because one is shorter than the other. So I'm just gonna push that down, and notice when I started to shave it like this, it wiggled. So you just wanna push straight down. So I took that, moved it around here, smooth out anything that you can, and I'm ready to put it up to become dry a little bit till the next day. What you're going to do is get a plastic bag. You're going to get a piece of tape to write your name and your hour. You are going to carefully put your vessel into the bag. Now, depending on how dry you want your clay to be, I want my clay to kind of firm up somewhat. So I'm not going to put a wet paper towel in there. I'm not going to wrap it as tight as possible. I'm just gonna kind of gently place it in the bag and then put my name and hour on it, set it up on the shelf. Okay, let's pretend that it's dried a little bit more so it's easier to work with. The next day I'll come in and I'll get my clay out of the bag and I will look at my pattern or use my memory, because sometimes the patterns get ripped when you're doing this. And I'm going to come up with my design. I am going to go with these different stripes I have on here. Your pencil works great for coming up with your patterns. I love using the back of the pencil to create different shapes of these circles. And see how it pushed in there a little bit? That's because it has not been hardened up. Okay, I'm gonna come in here. I'm gonna come in with this pattern. Remember, we're looking at geometry and designs, so you might want to keep that in mind. You want to do your design on your front and on your back. Do they have to be the same? No. You can do a different design for your front, and you can do a different design for your back. So here I'm going to go with my little two people. I'm going to have around, and there's my design and my story. Remember, if you're doing words, it's hard to get nice, clean words. They need to be larger and clear in your design. I would flip this over. I am going to do the back side as well. Couple things to remember is if this was harder, I'm kind of working on it and it's a little soft. You can see it kind of giving away. That's why you kind of want it to become leather hard. So imagine that I have a little bit more support on here than what I do. After this, you also need to think about the entire vessel. So you want to think about, how's it look on the inside? How's the top look? Does it need to be smoothed out? Do I need to come up with a design or pattern for the sides? Because just right now it looks a little boring. So you want to come up, you could wrap the same pattern around all of it, or you can keep just the one pattern and make them different. It's totally up to you. Let's say I want to put on some handles. Okay, if you want to create handles, take some extra clay. Oh, look at that, I have clay already cut out. I'm going to go ahead and cut that clay in half. And then I am going to basically curve it. Now when you curve it, you need to cut it to 45-degree angles so that it lays flat like a handle on a mug. I'm going to take this one, curve it, make sure that one lays flat so that they match. You could put just one on, make a picture on your design. Now in order to attach these, what do I need to do?
Score and slip.
Good. Do you have a question?
What if you want the handles to be a little thinner?
Make them thinner. Could you take, you know what kind of handles I kind of like? Let's go back to coils, okay? Take a coil, okay? Okay, how do you make coils? You know, you roll them out, kind of like making snakes.
You can also do the braiding technique.
That's what I was gonna do, Madison. Excellent. Okay, so you could take your coil and you could chop it into 3. Oh, they did this at when we went to Craft Alliance, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can take it and you can create a braid and then attach that to your vessel. Well, maybe I'll put that on Thunder and Lightning over here. So like maybe only even 1/2. Ooh, maybe I'll make this into a picture and turn this over here. Okay?
Getting creative.
I know, gosh.
Would you have to score and slip the braid beads?
Yes and no. You have, if you want them to stick together, you will. But if you're wanting them to be more airy, you don't have to because they're already together. But you do have to score and slip it to the vessel. So here, I'm attaching that there with the score and slip, and then this one down here with the score and slip. but I did not put all 3 together. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, yes ma'am.
The way you were doing it with letting it turn into like a leather thing, do we still get to fire it and paint it?
Yes, good question. All right, so basically leather hard, it's not fired yet, and it's not bone dry. It just is a little firmer because you can see how it's kind of falling apart with me as I'm working on it. And the reason it does that is because I'm not giving it time before I start manipulating and putting my design on there. So you really want your vase to kind of just firm up before you start getting too much details. That way it won't end up going, you know, how it's leaning somewhat here and somewhat there. Your piece, after you let it dry, you are going to leave it on the shelves for about a week. It's going to become bone dry. It is very brittle. You ever heard of someone say brittle bones? Well, the clay is extremely brittle. You breathe on it, it's going to crumble. That's why I always get worried when people are walking near the shelf. So you want to make sure that you don't touch it after you've set it up to dry. Then it's going to be put into the kiln. It's going to be fired to about 2,400 degrees. And then it's going to take 24 hours to do that. I'm going to unload it. You'll get it back. It's no longer gray. It's more of a white, the clay we're using. And we are going to glaze them. Glazing is using that special, it's not paint, it's actual glaze. Then I put it back in the kiln. It's going to fire, adhere, and it comes out looking like that glassy coffee mug look to it, that ceramic. And then you will be able to get a photograph and then a grade for it and take it home. Might be a good present for Mother's Day or something. So that's roughly the process. All right, ready? Back live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.